Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. Let me ask you something intimate. Have you ever felt like the moment you finally pull away, vanish into your own quiet, reclaim your peace? That is when she comes back. You disappear and suddenly she remembers how much she misses you. She texts, she calls, she wants to talk. Maybe it's a memory, a laugh, a question that didn't need to be asked, but it shows up and you sit there wondering, where was this warmth when I was showing up every day? You're not crazy for noticing it. You're not imagining it. There's a reason why women often respond to silence louder than they ever did to your presence. It isn't about games. It's about psychology, attachment, fear, power, mystery, and the uncomfortable truth about how we sometimes value something only after it starts slipping through our fingers. This video is not about tricks. It's about truth. It's about understanding the deep emotional current that runs beneath relationships, why disappearance can trigger desire, why absence can speak louder than words, and why your silence becomes the mirror in which she finally sees her reflection. So get comfortable. Let's talk about what really happens when you stop chasing and she starts looking. Have you ever noticed how the moment you stop reaching out, the moment your presence is no longer predictable, she suddenly remembers that you exist, and not in a passing thought or casual check in kind of way, but in a sudden, almost desperate emotional nudge. She calls. She wonders how you're doing. She sends that hey, that has no real content but is full of unspoken need. It's curious, isn't it? You spent weeks, maybe months, trying to connect, to show up for her, to prove your worth and your care, and it felt like you were shouting into a void. But the silence, that did what your voice couldn't. You might be thinking, why? Why does it always happen this way? And the truth is, it's not random, it's not coincidence, it's human, it's deeply psychological, it's even biological, because in every person, there's a longing to be pursued, but there's also a deeper fear of being forgotten. When you disappear, it touches something primal in the heart of another person. Not because you've manipulated them, not because you're playing games, but because something in the rhythm has changed. The music stopped, and silence forces reflection. You see, when you're always available, when you're always there, her mind never has the chance to miss you. You become like background noise, familiar, predictable, comforting, yes, but also easy to take for granted. And she doesn't do it on purpose. None of us do. We only start measuring the weight of someone's presence when we feel their absence. And for many men, that realization feels frustrating and sad. You think, why couldn't she see my value when I was present? Why did it take me walking away for her to start feeling anything at all? That's a fair question, a painful one. But let me offer you a different way to look at it. Sometimes it's not about her not valuing you. It's about the fact that she never had to confront the cost of losing you. She was living in a reality where you were always just one text away, one phone call, one DM, one footstep into her world. There was no contrast, and contrast, difference, is what awakens desire. When something you expect to be there suddenly isn't, your brain jolts, it reevaluates, it searches for meaning. Why did he stop texting? Is he upset? Is he seeing someone else? Was he serious? Did I push him away? And all of those questions create tension. That tension becomes curiosity. That curiosity becomes anxiety. And that anxiety, that is the fertile soil where attention begins to grow again. You have to understand, relationships don't exist in isolation. They exist in patterns. Patterns of giving, patterns of taking, patterns of chasing, patterns of retreat. And when you disrupt the pattern, when you step away without drama, without warning, you shift the power dynamic not by being cold, but by being still. And stillness, it's magnetic. But here's what I want you to understand more than anything. This isn't just about her. This is also about you. When you pull away, it's not just a reaction to her behavior. It's also a return to yourself, to your own center, to the part of you that may have been too focused on winning her over, too eager to please, too afraid to lose. And in that eagerness, you may have forgotten your own worth. The truth is, many men are taught that persistence is the answer to emotional distance, that if she's cold, you should be warmer. If she's distant, you should get closer. If she pulls away, you should chase. And I want to tell you something hard but freeing sometimes. The bravest thing you can do is to stop chasing, to pause, to listen to what her silence is actually saying, because women feel deeply, even when they don't speak it. And sometimes the space you give her isn't rejection, it's respect. It's an invitation for her to meet you halfway. Now, when she comes back, and she likely will, it won't always be with a grand gesture. Sometimes it's subtle. A stranger, a photo she tags you in, a question she could have Googled. That's not just casual. That's emotional fishing. She's checking if you're still on the hook. She's looking for a pulse. She's asking, do you still see me? And in those moments, you have a choice. You can respond immediately, as if you were waiting all along, or you can take a breath, a pause, and ask yourself, what do I actually want? Because it's easy to be reactive. It's harder to be intentional. To not confuse her attention for true connection. Just because she misses you doesn't mean she's ready for the version of you that needed to be missed in the first place. And I say this with deep compassion. You might still love her. You might still want her. But don't let the echo of her absence be the only thing that defines her return. Let her show you, not just tell you. Let her reveal whether she truly understands why you step back, or if this is just a moment of panic in the face of your detachment. Because sometimes people come back not because they love you, but because they miss the way you love them. There's a difference. And your disappearance, it forces her to confront that. It brings her face to face with the mirror she avoided for so long. In that mirror, she sees the cracks, the moments she ignored your efforts, the text she didn't reply to, the love she thought would always be there. Disappearing isn't about punishment. It's about preservation. You're not leaving to manipulate. You're leaving to heal, to return to your own breath, to remember that love given too freely, without return, becomes a transaction. But love held in balance becomes a bond. And when she feels your absence, not as a punishment, but as a void, something changes in her. She starts to revisit moments that didn't matter before, the way you looked at her, the things you said, the small gestures she shrugged off. She feels the weight of them now, because they're not available anymore, because you're not a given, you're a choice, and choices demand intention. So if you're sitting there wondering why she came back, why she's calling now, texting now, thinking of you now, it's because the silence you created did what your words could not. It created a space for her to reflect, to feel, to miss. And in that missing, she begins to remember what she once had. Let that not be a reason to rush back in. Let it be a reason to pause, to consider, and to ask yourself, is she coming back to love me? Or is she just trying to silence the discomfort of my absence? Sometimes, when she comes back, it's not with clarity, it's with confusion. She might not even fully understand why she's reaching out. Maybe she says she just wanted to check in. Or she tells herself it's just nostalgia. But underneath the surface, what's actually happening is emotional dissonance. She's feeling something she can't quite name. A part of her is unsettled, pulled toward the man who used to be a constant. That void, it's now filled with questions, and questions are powerful. They are the beginning of awareness. That little ache in her chest when she thinks of you, it wasn't there before. It wasn't necessary, because you were always within reach. But now you're not. You've returned to yourself. You're no longer orbiting her world, and that shift unsettles the balance. Not just the balance between you two, but the balance she had within herself. You see, your disappearance isn't just an action. It's a message. Not one shouted but whispered. It's the message that says, I will not fight for someone who won't meet me at the door. I will not exhaust myself in pursuit of someone who stands still. That message, when received, shakes the foundations of emotional safety she thought she had, because your presence created a comfort, a silent assurance, and now in its absence, she's left facing the parts of herself that relied too heavily on your chase. What many men don't realize is that often women are not rejecting you. They're rejecting their own vulnerability. They're guarding themselves. Maybe she's been hurt before. Maybe love has always been a battlefield, and the only safety she knows is in distance. And so when you showed up with consistency, presence, emotion, she didn't know what to do with it. It felt too risky, too open, and so she pulled away. But here's the paradox. The same woman who flinches at closeness may also yearn for it in your absence. Because absence becomes a mirror, and in that mirror she begins to see what she pushed away. She starts remembering not what you did wrong, but what she couldn't accept, the closeness she couldn't trust, the affection she couldn't receive. That's why when you disappear, she doesn't just come back to you. She comes back to herself, or at least to the part of herself that's finally ready to look inward. The silence you created allowed her to feel not just your absence, but her own emotional blocks. And if she's emotionally mature, she won't just come back with a casual, hey, she'll come back with a softness, a recognition, maybe even a confession. That's when you'll know she's not just afraid of being alone, she's actually starting to see you. But not every return is rooted in realization. Some returns are born from fear, the fear of losing attention, the fear of watching you move on, the fear that you too have found someone else to offer that steady affection to. And in that fear, she comes running, not because she wants to grow, but because she doesn't want to be replaced. This is why you must be discerning. Just because she comes back doesn't mean she's transformed. Sometimes it's the ego that can't stand to be forgotten. Sometimes it's the wound that speaks louder than the heart. And if you're not grounded in your own clarity, you'll mistake her reaching out as love, when in reality, it might just be loneliness dressed up as longing. So how do you know the difference? You don't rush. You observe. You listen. Not just to her words, but to her consistency. You look for change not in sentiment, but in behavior. Is she still guarded? Is she still unsure? Or is she now meeting you where you've always tried to stand? With openness, with reciprocity, with the courage to be real. And maybe the most difficult question you have to ask isn't about her. It's about you. Why were you so quick to disappear in the first place? Was it strength, or was it a last resort? Were you tired of being ignored, or were you finally remembering your own value? Because here's the truth, when you disappear from someone's life, it should not be out of manipulation, but out of maturity. It should not be a ploy to make her miss you. It should be a decision to no longer abandon yourself. You stopped calling because you were done begging. You stopped texting because you were done explaining. You stepped away because you finally understood that you were pouring from an empty cup. And when she comes back, what she's encountering is not the man who left. It's the man who evolved in the silence. The man who found clarity in solitude. The man who no longer needs her response to feel validated. And that energy, it's magnetic. Because now you're not emotionally dependent. You're emotionally aware. And that changes everything. It changes the tone of the conversation. It changes the way you look at her. It changes the way she feels around you. You're no longer reaching. You're receiving. You're no longer performing. You're grounded. And when a woman senses that shift, when she feels that you are no longer available on demand, something inside her recalibrates. She starts showing up with more care, more presence, not because she's afraid of losing you, but because she finally sees what she could have lost. And maybe, for the first time, there is space for an authentic connection, one that isn't built on fear or scarcity or longing, one that is built on truth, on mutual desire, on shared emotional risk. But to arrive at that space, you must be willing to stay grounded in your new self, to not fall back into old habits the moment she returns, to not shrink or chase or abandon your needs for the thrill of her attention. Because attention is not affection, and longing is not love. If she truly wants to be in your life, she will come not just with words, but with energy. She will make room for your presence. She will no longer treat you as an option, and most importantly, she will start earning her place, just as you once tried to earn yours. And you'll know the difference, because you're no longer looking to be chosen, you're choosing to. And from that place of strength, love becomes less about rescue and more about reciprocity. There is something profoundly human about wanting what we can no longer reach. And yet, when you're the one who's been chasing, longing, giving without return, it doesn't feel romantic. It feels exhausting. So when you finally choose to disappear, not with anger, but with quiet detachment, it's not just an exit, it's a boundary. And when she returns, the most important thing you can ask yourself is, am I ready to meet her again from this new place within me? Or will I fall back into the old version of myself that forgot how to receive? Because she may come back with softness. She may come back with nostalgia, but sometimes she also comes back with chaos, with mixed signals, with an emotional cocktail of regret, confusion, curiosity, and unfinished wounds. And if you don't recognize this, you will mistake it for intimacy. You'll think the chaos is chemistry, but what you're really feeling is a familiar imbalance, just dressed up in urgency. We are all drawn to the unresolved. We ache for closure, and when love feels interrupted, the mind and body crave completion. That's why you may find her returning, not because she's ready to love you better, but because the story you two started hasn't yet been finished in her heart. She's chasing resolution, and in some cases, she's hoping you will provide it. But the truth is, your job is not to fix her confusion. Your job is to stay aligned with your clarity. Because now you've tasted peace, you've reclaimed space, you've remembered that your attention is sacred. And not everyone deserves unlimited access to it. When she reaches out, you will feel something shift. Even if it's subtle, your heart will flutter, your chest might tighten. It's okay. You're human. You cared. You still might care. But don't confuse your openness for obligation. You don't owe her a return just because she finally noticed the void. Her awareness of your absence doesn't mean she's ready for your presence. What matters now is how she returns. Is she different or just desperate? Has she come with humility or just hunger? Is her voice soft with understanding or tight with fear of losing control? These distinctions matter because when we're emotionally invested, we often accept breadcrumbs, a late night message, a flirty emoji, a half-hearted check-in. And in your emotional hunger, you might read too much into it. You might fill in the blanks with hope. But remember, someone who truly wants to return will bring more than crumbs. They'll bring consistency. They'll bring clarity. They'll make it easy to understand where they stand. You won't need to decode. And if you find yourself still doing all the emotional labor, still wondering, still questioning, then the truth is nothing's really changed. She's returned, yes, but the pattern has not. So take your time. Observe. Because now, you are not the man you were when she first met you. You are not the man chasing validation. You are the man who has learned to sit with silence, to sit with your own company, and to honor your own worth even when no one is watching. Let her feel that man. Let her meet the version of you who is no longer afraid to walk away, because that version of you is powerful, not because he is detached, but because he is self-possessed, not because he stopped loving, but because he started loving himself just a little bit more. And when she comes face to face with him, she will either rise or retreat. But what matters is that you no longer collapse. You no longer dim your light just to keep her close. This is where you reclaim the narrative, not to punish her, not to teach her a lesson, but to show yourself that love, when rooted in self-abandonment, isn't love, it's addiction. And your withdrawal from her was a return to sobriety. Sobriety from overgiving, sobriety from emotional guessing games, sobriety from being the only one doing the work. And now, if she truly wants to be with you, she'll need to enter a different dynamic, one where you are not the only source of effort, one where mutuality replaces imbalance, one where you don't have to keep proving your value, because your value is already self-evident. But even then, you will have to decide, is the version of her that is returning capable of meeting the version of me that now exists? Because sometimes Sometimes we grow and they don't. Sometimes your healing outpaces her readiness. And that's okay. That's not a tragedy. That's maturity. You may love her still and still walk away. You may feel her longing and still say no. You may hear her apology and still remember that forgiveness is not the same as reunion. And all of this strength, this quiet discernment is what turns your disappearance from a moment of reaction into a movement of evolution. Because in the end, her return is not what defines you. Your response to her return does. And maybe, just maybe, if she has truly changed, if she has truly awakened, you won't need to chase anymore. You won't need to wonder. She will show up whole, honest, real. She will bring her truth and not just her fear. She will want to build, not just reconnect. And if that moment comes, then perhaps what was once broken can be reborn, not as a repetition, but as a reinvention. Now that you've stepped into this new awareness, let's talk about what comes after the return, when the texts start coming again, when the attention resumes, when her voice softens and the void begins to fill. This is the moment that feels both validating and dangerous, because in that warmth, that flood of comfort, it's tempting to forget the cold that came before it. The way she dismissed your efforts, the way she didn't show up, the way you felt alone while still being with her. This is where many men stumble. You interpret her return as a reset, a clean slate, but nothing resets unless it's rebuilt. And rebuilding, real, honest rebuilding, requires both people to hold the past in one hand and the possibility of the future in the other. So ask yourself, is she acknowledging what was broken, or is she pretending it never happened? Is she leaning in with accountability, or is she hiding behind affection and nostalgia? Because it's easy to say, I miss you. But it's much harder to say, I see what I did. I see how I hurt you, and I want to change that. That's what makes the difference between a momentary reconnection and a mature return. When you disappeared, it was not just physical. It was emotional. You took back your energy. You stopped performing. You stopped auditioning for someone's affection. That's a powerful thing, and it's not something you give up lightly. You need to know that if you're letting someone back into your life, they are stepping into a sacred space. A space that was earned through silence, pain, reflection, and growth. Let her show you that she understands that, not through grand gestures, but through real presence, through changed behavior, through a new emotional language that is no longer one-sided. Because love isn't about intensity, it's about safety. And safety isn't built through longing, it's built through reliability, through consistency, through small, deliberate acts of care. And if she's coming back just to feel safe again, but isn't willing to make you feel safe, then nothing has truly shifted. And you've changed. You don't need to be the version of yourself who waits, who begs, who proves. You're no longer in the business of convincing someone to love you the right way. You're in the business of showing up fully and letting those who are ready meet you there. Maybe now, you'll start noticing things you missed before. The way she minimizes emotional tension instead of addressing it. The way she disappears emotionally even when she's physically close. The way she always had one foot out the door, and now that you're gone, she wants back in. But not necessarily to stay, maybe just to soothe her ego, to scratch the itch of control. And this isn't bitterness. This is clarity. Because once you've gone quiet long enough to hear your own needs, really hear them, you realize how much you were settling for noise, for half love, for emotional crumbs. You've earned the right to want more, not more drama, not more passion, not more text at midnight, more truth. You deserve someone who doesn't just reach for you when you vanish, but holds you when you're present. Someone who doesn't need your absence to feel your worth. Someone who doesn't just return to reclaim you, but chooses to walk forward with you, eyes open, heart open, hands steady. And if she's truly changed, she will not be afraid of this depth. She will welcome it. She will lean into the uncomfortable parts of reconnection, the awkward conversations, the tears, the vulnerability, because she knows that anything real requires rupture and repair. Repair is not about forgetting the pain. It's about weaving it into something stronger. It's about choosing each other again, not out of habit, but out of intention. And that kind of love, it's not based on who disappeared or who came back. It's based on who stayed emotionally present when it mattered most. But sometimes she comes back not to repair, but to repeat. And if you don't slow down, you won't see it. You'll be drawn back in by the familiar rhythm, the comfort of attention, the illusion of change. And soon, you'll find yourself in the same cycle, the same wounds, the same loneliness. Only this time it hurts more because you knew better. So take your time. You are not in a rush. Love that is worth having will not demand urgency. It will allow for pacing, for breathing, for clarity. And if she can't sit with the silence you found peace in, then she's not ready for the harmony you now require. There's a deep kind of power in knowing that you don't need someone to come back in order to feel whole. You wanted her. You may still want her, but want is not need. And the moment you remembered that, when you stopped texting, stopped checking, stopped hoping, you became free. You became the man who is no longer defined by someone else's approval. The man who knows that love is not meant to be earned through sacrifice, but shared through mutual presence. So let her come, let her speak, let her show you who she is now. But remember, your silence was not just space, It was a filter, and who walks through it, and how they walk through it, tells you everything. It's a strange thing, isn't it? The way people suddenly remember you when your energy is no longer in their orbit, when the warmth you gave without asking for anything in return has vanished into stillness. It makes them think, it makes them feel, and it makes them reach out, not because you forced them, but because your absence held a mirror to their soul. But the truth is, the story was never just about her return. The real story is about your return to yourself. Because somewhere in the unraveling of the relationship, in all your attempts to hold it together, to understand her silences, to decode her distance, you lost parts of yourself. You dimmed your light. You abandoned your needs. You loved her more than you honored yourself. And that is what your disappearance gave back to you: space. Space to ask, who was I becoming when I was always chasing? Space to breathe without waiting for her reply. Space to sleep without checking your phone. Space to feel whole without a woman's validation. So when she finally comes back, and maybe she will, remember, the prize isn't her. The prize is the man you had to become to let her go. If she returns with real change, with softness, with accountability, with a desire to create something new, then beautiful, explore it. But only if you choose to, not because you miss her, not because she texted at the right hour, but because your soul, now clear and unclouded, says, I still want this, from this place, with new terms, with open eyes. And if she returns just to soothe the ache of your absence, if she clings not to build but to fill a void, then you'll know. Your silence did its job. It revealed what words never could. You see, this was never about playing hard to get. This was about becoming hard to forget. Not because you manipulated her emotions, but because you finally stopped shrinking to fit hers. You stopped performing. You stopped proving. You stopped asking to be seen by someone who only looked when you walked away. And now that she's looking, really looking, the question isn't, does she see me? The question is, do I still want to be seen by her? Because sometimes you disappear and realize that what you needed all along wasn't her coming back. It was you not going back. Sometimes the return you hoped for shows up, but too late or in the wrong form. And that's okay. That's not a failure. That's closure. There's nothing more powerful than a man who can feel the ache of reconnection, the longing, the temptation, and still say, no, that chapter is done. But if the chapter isn't done, if there is still space for something true and honest to be written, then do it slowly, carefully. This time without losing yourself, without abandoning your clarity, without confusing attention for love. She may feel different now, more open, more tender. She may even say the things you wish she said long ago. But watch the follow-through, because real change doesn't speak, it shows. And love, when it's ready, will not be confusing. It will feel safe. It will feel earned. It will feel balanced. So if she comes back, and she means it, you won't need to wonder. You'll feel it in your chest, not just in your loneliness. You'll feel peace, not anxiety. You'll feel calm, not chaos. And if she doesn't come back at all, that too is an answer. Silence is a language. It speaks in truth, not in hope. And you, my dear friend, have become fluent in it. You learn that waiting for someone to remember your value is a painful way to forget your own. So no matter how this ends, with reunion or release, know this. You did the bravest thing a man can do. You stopped chasing, you stopped pleading, you reclaimed your dignity. And in doing so, you gave her the one thing she didn't expect, your absence. Let that absence remain sacred. Let it be the line that you do not cross without reason. Let it remind you that love without reciprocity is not love, it's servitude. Let it guide you forward into relationships where your presence is not just noticed when it's gone, but cherished when it's there. And when the next woman comes, and she will, don't lead with fear. Don't withhold as punishment. Don't disappear as a tactic. Lead with truth, with boundaries, with a full self. Love from your overflow, not your depletion. Because now you know. You know what happens when you disappear. You know the weight of your silence. You know the power of stepping back, not to hurt, but to heal. And you know that sometimes letting go is the only way to see who really reaches. So if she comes, let her prove she's come not just to be seen again, but to see you fully, finally, for the man who no longer begs, no longer chases, no longer fears. The man who knows his worth because he met himself in the silence. And that is the man she won't be able to forget. Thank you for watching. If this spoke to something inside you, share your experience in the comments. What did you feel when you disappeared? What changed when she came back? Your story might help someone else find the clarity they need. Don't forget to like this video if it gave you strength. Subscribe for more truths about love, intimacy, and the deeper psychology of relationships. Stay grounded, stay powerful, and above all, stay true to you.